Hello, welcome to the next episode of the Powerless Podcast. In this episode, I talked to Stathopoulos. I hope I said the name correctly. I looked it up in the original recording as well. Who is one of the vocalists of the modern metalcore, modern metal band Saisei out of Athens, Greece. We talk about their debut full-length record, which is self-titled, so also titled Saisei. We do a breakdown of that. We talk about Stathis' start in music and inspirations for all the lyrics, and kind of what the trajectory for him and what he finds important lyrically and songwriting-wise will be for the band going forward as far as their focus on lyrics and things of that nature. It was really great to meet Stathis for the first time and kind of break down this record. It's absolutely fantastic. There's a lot of elements from across the sort of heavy music spectrum, from Sleep Token to more classic, like early 2000s metalcore. There's a few songs in here that you can definitely hear something reminiscent of like a Kill Switch Engage mixed with like I said, like Sleep Token, Bad Omens, that kind of music as well. There's a feature on their song track 6 on this record called Saisei Goes Punk, featuring Kellen Quinn of Sleeping with Sirens, which is pretty cool. We dive into that and how that got put together. And Kellen's vocals really put that one over the top. It is a absolutely fantastic song. So a lot to get into here, and it was just really great to meet and talk, like I said, with Stathis, and I hope you all really enjoy the conversation. If you have not checked the record out from this band, because I know we primarily have, American, some Canadian listeners, and a few in like New Zealand and Australia and stuff like that primarily, make sure to check this record out. I'll have it in the links below. Highly recommend. It came out this past Wednesday, December 4th. So you can check it out on all streaming platforms now. I highly recommend checking it out and giving this band a follow. Underrated band, great production on all the songs, and very dynamic with the vocals. So yeah, we get into all of that and more what the band's looking to do going forward. I kind of joke about this at the end, but I really hope this band blows up because it would be awesome to see them in the United States at some point. I think they have the chops as musicians. It would be great to see them kind of get really boosted to some big levels and get to do a lot more touring as they progress. So again, thanks to Stathis for coming on and doing this episode with me. I really hope you all enjoy it. Let's get into the episode here, but before we do that, just my usual plugs. Follow on all social media at thepowerlesspod. Email me at thepowerlesspod@gmail.com. Contact me at all those places, whether or not you want to be on the show. If you're a musician, producer, journalist, political commentator, activist, I kind of do episodes with both music-related and politically related guests. We do dive a little bit into that at the end as well for this episode. So definitely message me there if you want to be on the show. We've had a lot of great episodes lately. Just put out one the other day with indie rock band out of Madison, Wisconsin called Line. That's an absolutely fantastic band. They just put out a new EP. Did one recently with Secret Gardens, which is one of my favorite projects that I've found out about over the past year or so. So there's a lot of really great episodes to check out. And if you're interested in coming on, like I said, hit me up at all those places. Without further ado, let's get into the episode with Stathopoulos from Saisei out of Athens, Greece on the Powerless Podcast. Thanks so much.
So it seems like I'm running out of time, and I'm losing the plot, lost track of what I admire. Duty's all that I've got. We never face what's in front of us. We're taking breaths and we're all lost. Some person talks, but another smile. It feels like nothing's starting right now. So many lies, so we're getting off. Everything real seems to running down. Forget ourselves and what we get around. We did not go see nothing down, survive. More accusations floating around through the ether. I cannot make them stop.
All right, I am here for the next episode of the Powerless Podcast with, I should have asked this before I started recording just because I'm an idiot American over here. But your name is Stathopoulos, right? Am I getting that right, or is that horrible?
At the first, I can't when people get it right. I mean, the other one, Stathopoulos, but that is on me. That is on my side. Thank you.
That's on my dumb Midwestern American brain. But there's one of the vocalists for the modern metalcore band Saisei. Is that that's how you pronounce it as well, right? I'm doing horrible on the pronunciations to start things off here. Out of the Athens, Greece area, I think is what you shared over to me.
Yeah.
And we're gonna go over your newly released album, self-titled album. 8 tracks, absolutely fantastic record. I thought I was pleasantly surprised when you sent it over, and I first checked out your band that you feature Kellen Quinn on this record, which is a pretty landmark thing to have with the release. So happy to have you on. Thanks for connecting with me and wanting to do this and kind of breaking down the record. To start off, what I like to do with bands to kind of break the ice a little bit and also see kind of what you're listening to or what's kind of been on your on repeat on Spotify or the equivalent of. What's a band or two? They could be massive. They could be local ones you also play with, anywhere in between, that you could give a shout out to that you've been listening to a lot lately.
So, first of all, thank you for tipping to do this. Thank you for all your kind words about the band. We're called Saisei, by the way. Thank you for saying our record is good. So this is like a tricky part because my taste like wildly differs from my bandmates. I'm the least metalcore guy of all of them. Spotify Rap just came out today, as you know, and my top band was Rainbow Kitten Surprise by far. I've heard of them.
Yes, I have. I haven't listened to them recently, but I listened to them a bunch in college. Yeah, great band.
So all my top 5 favorite tracks were theirs. My other top artists were Casey Musgrave and Bentney, which is another favorite band of mine. They're prog rock. They're all from Berkeley. They're fantastic. I've been listening to them for years. And another artist I love is Lucas Cole. He's been popping up on the jazz scene. He's been in 2 bands that are pretty well known. Clowncore. We're not supposed to say he's everyone knows. Yes, these are very non-metalcore listens, but they've influenced me a lot in how I come on saying bands. If you're looking for fans of, we don't we try to sound it ends up something like is there Bad Omens, Sweet Token, and that your record.
Is that while she sleeps? Yeah. Those are all fantastic bands that are really kind of paving the way, I think, for what this what the sort of modern metalcore, whatever subgenres people want to throw out there. They're kind of paving the way for that sound. And I think your band, like you don't sound exactly like any of those bands. You don't sound like a copycat or anything like that. But you can hear the influences from those, as well as maybe even some of the artists you're talking about, as well as in some of the vocal deliveries and things of that nature, which is good. I think it's good to have you say you're the least metalcore person in the band, sort of in the influences you have, and that's a good thing to me when you have a band together, because if you're only listening to sort of the genres your band's in, you're not really bringing something exclusively different or maybe out of the box to the songs that I think you all did really well on this record. So thanks for going over that. That gives me I got to go back and listen to that band now. It's been a while and I loved them. It's just for whatever reason I just started listening to more breakdowns, I guess, like after college or something. But good for me to yeah. Oh yeah. But what I thought we would do today, so again, thanks for going over that, is to start off with maybe going over specifically for you where music became like a big, formidable force for you, going from just kind of being an average listener to creating your own music and all those sorts of things. And then we could do a track by track breakdown of the new self-titled record. So to start things off here after that, just kind of tell me where music became like a big force for you, where you decided you wanted to kind of make your own music and, become a singer, vocalist, all the good stuff.
When I was in school, I would listen to whatever like everyone else was listening. I wasn't really interested in music. It was like the same sort of thing where, everyone's into sports, everyone's into some movies. I was like listening to whatever my classmates were listening. So I was exposed to music like what was huge in late 90s, like Blink-182, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Daft Punk, but never really being into it. And then one day my mom came back home and she was listening to a couple of CDs on a record store. Remember those like stations where they had like 6 specific CDs and like people would listen to them?
Yes, yeah, yep.
So she came back to schools and and she was like, you should listen to this. And it literally changed my life. It wasn't even I was sort of like very afraid of it, but very intrigued. It influenced me in a way that music would never influence you at the age of I was like 11. So it was great, I was certified. I was like, this is so. We literally listened to that record for a whole year. Then I reverted to classic metal, but also radio. From then on, more. I wasn't really interested in go. I know I was like in love with more so the encyclopedic knowledge of finding out stuff about music. I was really like in love with finding out discographies and band members and all that stuff. I love being an encyclopedia of useless knowledge. And I just naturally gravitated to stuff to play with bands. And, initially I had learned piano, but I wasn't really into it because I learned classical music, like, everyone wants to like please their parents and stuff like that. So because I was lazy, I didn't want to pick up the drums or guitar or something that would take space, whatever. I just naturally gravitated to singing. It was like the easiest thing to do, and I just ended up being a singer.
Well, I think I think your band very much so, like you have, because there's both you. So I'm guessing from your background, just because someone that has just listened through the record several times and not seen you live, that you do singing, right? And then your other vocalist is more of the like dirtier vocal screaming, that sort of thing. That's the case, right?
It was like that is our main role. However, he is a fantastic singer as well. Like he's very technically trained. And I sort of scream as well, but I do very different kinds of screams. I can only inhale scream, where he does like, he has a wild variety of screams.
That's really cool that you're able to go back and forth on that too, so that you can just really build like a lot of different voices around the music. That's great. But I mean, again, it makes a lot of sense. You just get really into music encyclopedic knowledge. Maynard is a hell of a singer to first like really dive into. That was very formidable for me as well around that time. So I'm right with you there. Going from that though, kind of getting into singing, and again, the easy access is also good. You don't have to buy a drum set and try to fit it in your living room and spend $1,200 on a cab and get a guitar. You can practice singing along with songs to start things off and go from there. When did you kind of go from that and join, get into, creating music, joining a band, things of that nature, and then we can get into your current project?
I was 14. I think I was in school, like at school bus. I was like in the school bus when like someone heard me just belt really high notes for like songs, like heavy metal songs I was into, and they assumed I had like a good voice, which I didn't. They were like, "Oh, you can hit a high E," but it was just like, however people just do it for fun. And he invited me into his band. I wrote a song. I wrote the only, I think, ballad for that group because all of their songs were like on the heavier side. And at the same time, they were like, "Wow, this guy's a wuss." But at the other end of the spectrum, they were like, "Oh, he can actually like write a song." So that gave me a lot of confidence that I can, assimilate my influences and eventually do more genres. That band didn't do much. Like we did an independent release when we were in school, and then eventually I started forming other bands. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It was like
very cool. But going from that, and that's so classic too of having like one release as a couple of high school kids, and then moving to other things. But going from that, how does the iteration of this band come together, and just kind of speak to that? Where did the creation for that come in for you?
So one of my best friends was a founding member of this band. He was the first drummer this band had, and it never happened that we worked together in a project. So he invited me. We're much older than the other band members. Like we're a different generation. But he, the first song they put out wasn't really my style. But Stathis, who is the leader of the band and the main composer, shared some of the demos. One of them was "Better Alone," which is the track on this record, which never changed. It never changed. It had the same title, and I was like, I immediately vibed with that. Like I came up with the same chorus that the track has in like a minute. And I was like, yeah, this fits. Eventually that friend of mine left the band, but this is how things started shaping up.
Very cool. I know from your guys' Spotify, at least, which is not always everything. There can always be other things kind of bouncing around. But you've released songs off and on the project. As I know, you said that there was, the first release was without you, but they've been around since 2021. released a lot of different singles, and then we kind of come to this current self-titled record. Before we get into a track by track, just in general, like I said, this record I think has a lot of elements of the kind of best elements of the modern metalcore genres, as well as kind of bringing in the one where you featured Cal and Quinn that we'll get to. You have Saisei, sorry, I can never pronounce the name correctly. Saisei, right? Is that correct? Saisei. I'm awful. Yeah, goes punk. That one, it was funny when I saw that title. I was like, what the hell? It's kind of like an interesting title to start things off. And then I totally got it, because that even has like the kind of fast punk energy to it, kind of mixing that with like very, kind of like the Killswitch Engage old era that kind of had that element in it too. So again, pulls from a lot of different things that you kind of laid out earlier, but just in general, what was the writing process for this record like? Were there, you named off some big influences in general for the band.
Yeah.
What's kind of the writing process like for your band, and how did that go for this record, for your kind of debut full-length album?
Yeah, I love our writing process. It's very organized and meticulous. It's mainly against Stathis, who is the main composer, along with our other main composer and also guitar player, Thanos. They come up with tracks of their own, and then they collaborate. We have a very well-made, pre-produced track. And then I add vocal ideas. We used to have another person screaming who was also very creative on the vocal front. It's their ideas mostly that are on this record, and not Apostolios, who is the guy who is the screamer now. But yeah, that was pretty much it. It was, we did a little back and forth, and then they very like subtly adjusted the tracks to maybe better fit our vocal ideas. And then in the end, there was another layering, because we go through the actual recording and production of the album. We had another external producer who's working on it, and he also added his own flavor to the whole record, just so it all ties in together. Yeah, it was like, I've made a couple of albums like in my life, and I think this one was the best process by far.
Yeah, it sounds like a well-oiled machine, basically, for you all, for all the different things you have to do to get the product up and running. To kind of get into the track by track here, it's 8 tracks, with Machinations on Central being sort of an instrumental interlude.
Yeah.
Is there an overall, lyrically and kind of the songwriting aspect in that vein, was there like overall influences you had on this record? Was there like a cohesive, narrative or emotion you were getting across in this, in that vein? I just kind of speak to that overarchingly before we go into the track by track.
There's not really a story or a narrative. It's just the theme of the album ended up being very focused on personal relationships. Almost all the songs are about either, romantic relationships or friendships or tensions between the bands. And then to tie it all up, Lethargic, which is the last track, has more of a socioeconomical theme in its lyrics, which also ties in the whole concept of relationships in a more, global and mass level. But that goes like a little further, and like kind of ties into what our next releases are going to be about more so.
Very cool. All right, well, let's just jump into it right off the bat here and go track by track. The first song, The Changeling, this is the one that obviously I heard first when you were nice enough to send it over early to me before the release. This is where I instantly, first hearing this, I was like, okay, I'm going to actually really enjoy talking about this record. Because I love the it's always existed, but I love when people can pull out more like deep baritone kind of soulful singing, and then have the music punch in, and and not always.
Yeah.
And you do this all over the record, very dynamic in your vocal deliveries. But that was the first thing that caught me when I listened to it, along with the production and obviously kind of like the in your head refrains and things like that. So kind of break down the lyrics for this one, anything you can speak to specifically, songwriting and things of that nature.
Yeah, The Changeling is basically, I think it's my favorite of the album lyrically, because I always wanted to make a track that speaks about, you always want to make the tracks that don't exist. And for me, I always felt especially in romantic relationships, that when you're like deep into a person and you can't get over them, in order to do that, you need to let go of it's like you can't really let go of it because it's so tied to your past that you need to kill your previous self. So that's why the murder me and unleash the changeling lyrics very central to the theme. It sounds very emo and dramatic, but that's exactly the kind of person I am. And the singing is very influenced by Sleep. So again, I think the track, not that influenced, but also there's a ton of the tokenisms in it. The title is kind of alluding to that. We're trying to not cross that barrier where we're living up, but it's heavily influenced. And yeah, it's basically trying to create the symmetry of two people that desperately need each other, but they have to realize that codependency is not good for them.
Yeah. I mean, a very universal theme that I think you deliver in a very haunting way in the record, or like you said, and like I made sure to clarify earlier, definitely an homage to Sleep Token in this song, with it still being your own. I think it's very reminiscent of that in like a very cool way, where I think it would definitely pull in listeners of that band to find a new band that they would be a fan of, which I think is a good thing. Great track.
Sorry to interrupt, but another thing is I hate in songs where, and I wanted to make something where the other person's going through the exact same thing. It's just how you more narrate how you are going through this process, and not so much you're a whore, you're a terrible person, and you did this to me. Like that's a very easy way out, I think, lyric.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and something that I think the modern metal scene for a lot of bands have gotten better about that. But as you know, I'm sure you got into some of the bands that I did kind of when I first got into this sort of scene. And boy, looking back at some of those lyrics, it is very whenever it's about a relationship, it's very like pointing finger, sort of, can be misogynistic, can be all these different things. So it's good that you're able to deliver that song in more of like an honest, like mature, introspective, kind of way. I think that's a good way to do it, and a healthy way to do it, to kind of like in the cathartic aspect of writing songs too, All right. Again, like I said, fantastic track. We'll go on to the next one, FMLT. Just kind of break down the influences there, lyrics, etc.
Yeah, I think that song is more of our metalcore side going, full open. I think it's definitely influenced from a more modern Bring the Horizon and While She Sleeps. Mm-hmm. The clean vocals clash with it because I don't think it's a track that was made for those, but I think we ended up creating a really powerful chorus, even though that wasn't, I think, the intention there. Lyrically, it's like, you know what I said about the previous track, it's the exact opposite. It's just completely maturing. You're to blame for whatever is happening to me. It's pretty much the exact opposite. Most of the screaming ideas and lyrics are by a previous screamer, Dionysus, who's no longer a member of the band, but that is a track where he had a lot of ideas on, and we did not throw them out. That's pretty much it. Yeah. I think it's our strongest chorus, I think, on the record.
Yeah. It's definitely like a hell of a hook. And I get the influences from kind of Bring Me the Horizon While She Sleeps too, with the kind of riffs alone of like the main verse parts. Like that's something heavily, like I listen to a lot of like the more modern While She Sleeps, and you can definitely, now that you said that, like hear that influence there in a really cool way. And there's nothing wrong with giving the opposite side after what we just talked about. I think that's also the human condition, right? That's like, who doesn't also still feel that way in reality? So again, very relatable.
Yeah. It's a song completely surrendered to the human condition.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, very cool. Moving on, we've got Machinations on Central. That's the kind of interlude track that you have on there. I don't know if there's, anything you want to say on that one, other than, it's a cool. I was kind of like welcome. It was kind of like a welcome surprise to hear a cool like little interlude, instrumental in a like independent band album. You don't hear those all the time anymore, so that was kind of a cool little treat. But anything you want to say about that one, really?
So the Machinations on Central is the intro to Impetus. It ties in together. It was pretty much, I think, an intro. I think it was like, an original idea while we were composing Impetus, where it might have fitted it somewhere else during the track. It could have been like an alternative introductory riff. And we ended up just using it as a separate track and an intro. And when we're playing live shows, we actually start the show with this interlude, but it directly leads to Impetus. It doesn't stop and star.
Yeah.
So if you see it live, it just gets people going, and then we hit with direct links to impetus, and it makes a lot of sense. The title is basically alluding to that. It's like we're having these little working between us. These experimentations, but they're like out in the open. That's what it means. And then impetus is, I think, a track that was mostly composed by Stathis, but we didn't want to again just allude to a certain band. It was more of his EDM influences, and how would we as a band adjust all the metal and riff elements into an EDM track. And I think it came out pretty well. It was, I think, our first release from this record, and it was a sign to our fans that, we're still gonna hit hard, and we're gonna have like those screams, those breakdowns, and all those elements you like. But this is like our new direction for now. Lyrically, it's about tensions between the band and how this ongoing my idea versus your idea is, the more heated it becomes, that means the better the song would probably end up. And it's kind of a way of phrasing a non-toxic, communication in between whoever creates something creative. It doesn't have to be a band. So it's not really blaming anyone. It's saying, we're in this together, and I understand that because I'm passionate about this and you're passionate about this, it's fine. This is how things should be. If you weren't passionate about it and I was like by myself, that wouldn't bode well for our project.
Yeah, I love that. I love that the song is sort of a, obviously you write it again to where it can be universal, which is always great, but you're able to write it very specifically about basically like a love letter of the band, like of being able to kind of do this creative process together, and how vital that is to, having that tension from different people that are very passionate about a creative project, how that ultimately creates a better song or a better art piece, better whatever. That's cool, because I think not too many bands end up making songs that sort of celebrate art in that way, lyrically. I think that's a cool and sort of like more original concept for like a modern metal band to kind of write a song about. And it's a good one. I mean, this one and Changeling, and then probably also Lethargic are like the three that, my first listen and then second listen, I was like, these are the three that stick out to me that I like personally would put as the top three for me on the record. And it's cool that like lyrically, and of course, like lyrically, it's cool that it kind of has that different flair to it. Going on to number 5, you talked about this one a little bit before, Better Alone, which was a demo pretty much you said sent to you. It was the first song you kind of worked on for this release, I think you said earlier, but you can kind of tell me if I'm wrong. But
I just worked on this.
Sorry, go ahead and just break down the songwriting, the lyrics, all the good stuff.
Yeah, I just worked on this by myself when I got the track. It was nowhere near the stage of completion. I just came up with a chorus, and I always knew it was going to be a strong single. And for some reason, it reminded me of Baby Metal, like the main sample, even though the track ended up being nothing like it. But yeah, it was not much. I feel it's essentially it kind of reminds me of bands like Electric Callboy. Like it's a little more fun, a more fun side of us. I would be very excited if we had more songs of that nature, because we do have a very like serious and lugubrious side to our song. And lyrically, I just like the demo title was better.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Right to it from the song title, you can kind of get the gist of that pretty well, right? I know I'm a broken record when I say this, but unfortunately, a super relatable song for everybody, but also a good thing for people to kind of remember in their own personal philosophy at the same time. Great song. I get where you say it's sort of a pop song in the sense there's like a lot of big vocal moments in it that I think really kind of lets you shine in that track in a very cool way. Going to the next one, I want to ask you, because I talked about it a little bit earlier, this one featuring Kellen Quinn. What's the because all your other track titles are what I would say like pretty serious or just kind of encapsulating the narrative of the song. I don't always ask this, but what's the meaning behind the track name? Was that just kind of a goofy one to throw in there for you guys to show the fun side, or where did that idea come from to name it that?
What's the deal? So the title was the demo title. Thanos, who is one of the composers, like he does this a lot. He writes Saisei goes punk, Saisei goes hardcore. Like, the song is a little off our main genre, so I'm gonna name it that. and we just kept calling it that. And we threw out like a bunch of titles. We had the guest vocal, we had the feature from Kellen Quinn, and then when we were talking about finalizing the titles, we were like, why not just call it that? It's way more fun. Nobody gives a shit like what pretentious title we want to give it. People are gonna give it more attention. It asked Kellen Quinn, so it makes sense. And we're talking about the possibility of making it a thing where in every record we have Saisei goes something exclamation mark. I don't know if we're gonna follow through, but I'm loving that idea. But yeah.
And before we get into like the lyrics and the songwriting aspect of this one, obviously, like you said, it's a little more on the punk side. It's kind of got those energetic, chugged, palm muted chords and things of that nature for the progressions. Where did the idea come from for you all, or how did it come together to get a feature of Kellen Quinn on this? Very iconic voice, instantly recognizable when he's on the track. There's no bones about it, right? So where did that come from? And then just kind of get into the rest of the song.
Well, we came up with the song has like two choruses, and we came up with the lines, but they weren't really fitting either of our voices. We kind of instantly knew, oh, this is like this is what fits here, but it doesn't sound like neither of us. And we just, even before Kellen was in the picture, we just assumed that it was going to be a guest. And then we, threw around some ideas. And I think literally the first thing we were like, oh, this is like Sleeping with Sirens. This is what totally fits here. And we just emailed Kellen Quinn, and he was just available. And he did it. It was, not only did he do it, he was very helpful in also shooting a video of himself with like an actual camera while he was on tour, so we could include him in the video. Like we would just ask him if he would do the footage with a phone or something. He was like, yeah, how you guys want the shot? Like, how you guys want the camera? So like, he was very helpful about the whole thing. But pretty wholesome dude.
That's awesome. Yeah. Adds a lot to the song. Really, really cool feature to have on your, on this record. Lyrically, what was this one about? And kind of speak to that a little bit for me.
Lyrically, it's like a cross between, again, the tension you feel in a project. Like, again, how pressured you feel sometimes. You're like, oh my God, I'm gonna quit this, but you're so close to the finish line, you can't even see it. And it's also, I don't want to use this term, but it's very vaguely, it's about cancel culture, in the sense that, again, it ties into people working together where you throw in some insult you don't really mean. But it's like you see that person every day, you interact with them every day, so you would treat them a little worse than you would. You gotta
not be like the definition of reactive to everything that you do, and actually just like take a breath and be present, not give into like every little reactive thing that you can that comes to mind. That makes a lot of sense. Again, broken record, but very very relatable, very cool song, and a hell of a feature. Got 2 tracks left. These both are very, in my view, like pretty different from each other to kind of end things off on the record, but very cool. So let's start off with Swan. Tell me kind of the influences here, etc. My spiel I was going to ask you like I have for every other song. So
Yeah, that is probably my favorite song. It's completely different from anything else, but I love emo. I love Circus Survive. I love that kind of vibe. It's the one that is the closest to that. Yeah. Not really much to say musically, because it's just a song that wouldn't fit anything else we've done before. It would only fit in this album. It has a very, beautiful instrumentation, orchestration that really like, I didn't feel like it was a lot of work to come up with that vocal. It was, sometimes it's just work. When you listen to that music, it just works, that you like, oh, this is exactly what fits here. And lyrically, it's that crossroad where you feel like it's about a relationship, but it can be about friendship or whatever sort of relationship. It's about that path where you're like, do I regret whatever good thing I spent with this person because they're not in my life, and now like you feel this loss, or are you like appreciative of it because for some reason and somehow in your everyday life, it has made you someone who is more resilient, something like that. It's personal. I can't really.
Yeah.
I don't know what more more to say. Like if you read the lyrics and they speak to you, they do. If not, I'm not happy for you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I know. Yeah, it's kind of weird when you've got songs like this that are obviously about a very personal thing to try to explain them without going into details of things that you just would not want to bring up on an interview. So that makes a lot of sense. But very, very good song, very cool one. Yeah, the sort of not just on this one, but I mean this one I think is where it shines, like you said. But it's sort of the symphonic nature you have in a lot of these songs. I think does separate a little bit in a cool way you from some of the other modern metal bands you listed earlier. Not that they don't do it, but the way that you all did it, it's kind of like a cool mix of how like the kind of modern metal staple bands do it, and it also has a flair of like that, the kind of classic symphonic metal bands that you can hear in, that were kind of bigger maybe in the early 2000s or 90s, things of that nature, but obviously with like a modern element to it. I thought that was like a really cool detail that I was able to catch up on through listening through this, and Swan's definitely one that it's at the forefront in a really cool way for sure.
I think it's a song that would fit like an S&M album sort of type, like a symphonic version. Yeah, I think out of all of our tracks, it's the one that would fit that the most.
Yeah, 100% agreed. And it's really cool. It adds a lot to the emotion of the song and all of that. The last one you had mentioned earlier, Lethargic, to kind of wrap up the record, is you said it's a little bit different lyrically. You said it's got a little bit more of a socioeconomic message that you want to maybe explore further in more releases. Before we get to that, though, I just had a question, since this is your, I think your first full-length record, at least from what I could find online. And have you found with doing this record, as opposed to the singles you guys were doing in the past, that it kind of, having these 7 full fleshed out songs, 8 tracks, really allowed you to explore things like what you did in Swan, or, in Impetus and all these different songs that maybe you wouldn't have if you were doing like single oriented things, trying to put out the most popular metalcore song you possibly could, or things of that nature? Like, did it kind of adjust things for you guys that way to kind of open up the creativity?
Definitely. We made this band with, the best intention to do things, but obviously we are Greek bands, and more so we're an Athenian band. Acts like Swan and Lethargic have a way bigger audience, let's say, but it's hard to meet those people. Whereas us starting out as a metalcore band, we already kind of belong to a scene. You can tie us up. If you live here, you know which bands we're tied with. We kind of all know each other as bands and fans. So when we're releasing one track every so often, you feel like you have to adhere to certain principles. Like, it has to have heaviest like riff possible, the most aggressive breakdown. And we did like release songs that didn't fit that structure previously. But when you're like, oh, we're going for an album now, you feel much more free to be creatively expressive, which I think that goes more for the guys who compose the songs. It obviously goes for me, but I'm the kind of element in the band that I can get away with an R&B vocal and like the heavy track, because I just create that tension, that thing that goes against the status quo. And it will sound cool, but I don't have the responsibility of coming up, with a totally different sound. So when we're going for an album, you're free to be like, this song doesn't fit our recipe, whatever. It can be the song that does that. It could be the song that's the exception. And obviously there are tracks that are still fitting that metalcore, not recipe or formula, but you know what I'm saying. It's kind of more akin to that sound, and juxtaposing the both is is pretty much what we needed in order to also be expressive and also slowly kind of be like, yeah, we're still tied to that scene, but we also want to expand.
Absolutely, makes a lot of sense. And I always think it probably does, in the sort of single eras that we're in with streaming platforms, constantly. I think it's a good thing to remind artists that, like, when you do a full multi-track project, it just mentally opens up paths to kind of break the mold a little more. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, getting back into the last track here, Lethargic, go ahead and speak to the influences there, lyrics, etc.
Yeah, maybe socioeconomical wasn't the right term. Maybe sociopolitical.
It's
It's just we're still a big battle of, I'm trying to express what really concerns us is like generations here without being too peachy about it. But basically, we went through a whole crisis after 2008, and our way of life has been very degraded. It's part of that, and like, millennials and Gen Z have suffered pretty much because of it. I'm trying to mostly describe the mindset of agreeing today, which is I will be very critical of my government. I'll be very outspoken about it. I'll be very vocal about it. But if I was ever in their position, I would act the exact same way they do. So it's pretty much saying you're lethargic in the sense, lethargic and comfortable, and yeah, you're ready to be a revolutionary, but still mostly words, not a lot of actions. But if you were in that position, like you wouldn't talk all that shit, and you probably would be just them. I mean, I don't want to be pessimistic, but that's what I see around me. And yeah, I was just, I'm not like the most politically like informed person. I grew up like watching Young Turks, and eventually I got into um stuff like Breaking Point, Majority with Sam Peter. I don't know if you're like into those shows at all.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I'm like a regular consumer of. I'm not really into it with knowing policies and stuff, but I'm pretty up to date with the news, and like I can gossip about that stuff on a daily basis. And it was just a nod towards that side of me where, I'm seeing this shit every day. I can't just not address it ever and so. But some day I can't just not address it ever and so. But some
Yeah, I mean that again, very universal. I know I'm not sure if you're overly familiar, but I've had on several like political guests on here over the year or over the years
Yeah,
or
yeah,
two.
yeah.
So yeah, this is right up my alley. And I think what you're saying there is it's not getting into the weeds of pretending to be like an overly political expert that this is how we do things, this is how we solve all of our problems, but it is like an honest
Yeah.
view as someone that consumes news and media, knows and is like a everyday person that lives in the the realities of the sort of ruling class and whatever capacity you're in, while still acknowledging the psychology behind each person. I think that's a good and honest way to talk about those things. And yeah, I when I was listening through that one, I was like, this one feels a little political to me with some of the like lyric lines I would pick up and just kind of the overall sense of it. But yeah, still found a way to talk about something like a little more out of the box than like personal relationships, but finding a way that I think even if somebody didn't maybe agree with, if they talked to you and didn't
Yeah.
agree with your personal stances on politics, they could pull away something from that of just like of more of like the philosophy behind what you're saying is pretty universal, that I think a lot of people would feel. So it's a good on you for being able to write a song that way. That's not easy.
Yeah. If I could be more specific about it, like let's say there's a line, in order to tie this into what I'm saying, is there's a line called that says we live in a mass Milgram plague. So about John Milgram's like famous experiments where people who would criticize Nazi Germany soldiers for doing what they did. They like did this experiment where they were like, you have total like what's the term where you don't get
Immunity.
accused of anything. You have total immunity for whatever you do, and then they're like, you know, uh, go ahead and electrocute that person or whatever it was, and you should turn it up to. And I think they were told that if it goes up to 10, they will kill them, and then they would tell people, yeah, like turn it up to 5, 7, 8. I don't remember the stats. I don't want to say
Yeah.
something like unscientific, but I think it was like a huge percentage that would do it without any hesitation. And it's basically, I'm basically correlating that to someone who, yeah, will criticize, but at the same time, when you're given that position, that authority and that power and that immunity, you will act exactly the same. So I don't want them to, but it's just, I'm just basically, facing what I don't want to admit, but I hate about humanity, which is what art, I think, should be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit that on the head, and thanks for going into detail about that, because I'm sure maybe some people wouldn't necessarily initially catch that line and understand what that means offhand. I think
Yeah.
I kind of forgot about that. That what a wild statement on like the human condition, right? Like I'm always someone that like focuses on systems and people in power, and the people that are making decisions that affect other people's lives and all that. But it is like a different sobering thought to think about that experiment, and kind of connecting it to what you're talking about in the song. It's a sober reminder, I guess, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So again, thanks for breaking this down with me in detail on all these songs. Saisei's debut album is out now. I said it right that time, right? Okay, I really hope I did. Okay, third time's the charm. A self-titled track list or self-titled album is out now on Spotify, on all streaming platforms. Before I let you go, and again, thanks for breaking all this down, just kind of let the audience know first what you hope, just anything else you want to say, kind of wrapping up talking about the record, what is kind of coming up next for you, and then lastly, I always pick I always have the guests pick a song to play at the end. So kind of think about which song you would want from this album to play at the end for people to hear for the first time.
So self-titled album, Saisei, is released today. It's available on streaming platforms and Bandcamp. Our next plans, our very immediate plans, I would have two Greece. One is Arch Club. The next day we're playing Thessaloniki, 8-Ball Club. And we have another show planned in Sofia, Bulgaria, January 17th. We're trying to plan a tour. I don't know if that's going to work out. If we do, all information will be available on socials. And we're currently recording tracks. We're going to follow up with another release pretty soon as possible. I think that's pretty much it, Yep.
Well, yeah.
And we should pick a track.
Yep. You got to pick a song to kind of close things out here. Yep.
Well, this isn't me, so I'm going to be very egotistical and say Better Alone.
Yeah. Again, good highlight. It makes sense. You're the person on the podcast put on the song that kind of like lets you, is kind of like the one that kind of shows your voice, I think, in the biggest way on the record. And it's a fantastic introduction to the band as well. So again, we're gonna play Better Alone from Saisei, which just released their debut self-titled album. Thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time, and all the best with the release. And we got to just get you big enough where I can come see you in Chicago here in a couple of years. We got to get it going. That's what we're putting out into the world. So again, thanks so much for doing this with me.
Thank you,
yeah,
Brandon.
yeah, thanks.
You seem unconscious all the time. The mess you leave behind, potential outcomes pushed aside. Surmise the fine. Give me danger by design. Give me through without the reason or rhyme. Give me danger by design. Give me through without the reason or rhyme. You gotta hold it down. A push and pull that drives us under. You gotta hold it down. You gotta take it in. And you better off alone. Can you see the situation's critical? Go ahead and drag me with you in a turn. Till just a shadow of the former self. And you're better alone. And you're better alone. So many stars and all about it. You're in danger by design, and I tell you that's your